Hey there. Welcome to another episode of Carve Your Own Fucking Path, a podcast made to inspire you to create a life and business on your own terms. You'll hear candid interviews with people who have boldly decided to blaze their own trail, and the occasional solo show with me, your host. I'm Willa McDonough, on-camera coach, storyteller, and remote video producer. 5 years ago, I moved from my home base of San Francisco to the coast of Portugal, taking a big leap into the unknown. Some called it courageous. I called it carving my own fucking path. Today, I live in Lisbon and run a business that elevates your online presence, helping you show up confidently on camera to create videos that showcase your brand and personality so you can get more visibility and attract clients by being yourself. If you're just starting out in business or you've been doing it for a while, you're sure to pick up tidbits of actionable advice and hopefully feel inspired by stories from people who have chosen the unconventional and sometimes messy path. And if you've been waiting for a sign to start carving your own fucking path, this is it. I'm so happy you're here. My next amazing guest is Christian Burne. Christian is a professional transformation coach and hypnotherapist. But less formally, Christian really loves to help purpose-driven professionals and change makers unlock the transformative power of inner calm. And so they can access their highest levels of resilience, self-confidence, and self-esteem. We dive deep into his journey and the turning point, which was a cancer diagnosis that really put him on this path towards becoming a healer and a coach. Christian has so many beautiful insights and stories and takeaways for you. And just speaking with him, I felt very calm and at peace. So I hope you really enjoy this episode. Thanks for listening. Welcome, Christian. Thanks for being on the podcast.
My pleasure.
Fucking path. And
great title.
So we're just going to dive. I'm glad you like it. Thank you. If it doesn't resonate with you, then it's not the right podcast.
Yeah. Well, I think that as a title, I think that's pretty much a t-shirt line for so many people nowadays, because now's the time. If you're going to carve your own path, there's never been a better time, I think, in history than to do it right now.
Definitely. And we're going to talk a lot about that, because that's essentially what you help people do, right? Is carve their own path. And so if you would just do a quick intro, and then we will dive into your backstory.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll start where I am now, shall I? Because I think as we go into the backstory, you'll see I've had quite an eclectic existence and a career in across both professionally and personally. Right now, I divide my time between coaching and doing some consulting work as well. The coaching work is pretty much 80% of my time, and that's really focused on. I love working with people that want to make a difference. They're mission ready. They've heard the calling. They've pivoted out of jobs, or they've made the leap into their own business, and they're pursuing. And during that period of time is usually when they're confronted with their stuff, because they're exposed. Yeah, they've put their flag in the ground and said, "This is what I'm doing," and that naturally comes with a lot of releases. It can create tension between the ambition and what you want to achieve. And then those inner kind of forces of things like self-doubt. Am I good enough? I'm going to get judged. I'm going to fail. So really, I help them pursue emotional freedom, because really that's the root of pretty much everything that we're pursuing, and excellence. And I do that through my commitment to inner calm, which you mentioned earlier. And that's linked to a bigger sort of meta idea and platform that hasn't really been released. I need to coach myself through this. I've just realized that it hasn't really been released to the public yet, called Agents of Calm, which is an idea that I have been toiling with now for about 12 years, but it's very close to becoming an actual platform that will go in to work with organizations and corporates, mostly creation-based organizations. I don't want to say creative, because that takes us to agencies. Creator-based organizations that will do exactly what I do with individual clients, but I'll have a collective of specialists that represent the 7 principles of the Agents of Calm practice, if you want. The other side of my work is having spent 18 years in the advertising industry as a new business and strategic lead. I do a lot of consulting on that basis, usually around helping startups and early stage companies get real deep clarity on what they're doing and open up their perspective about the possibility of their product or service.
Okay. You're pretty busy, sounds like.
I could be busier, but that's my choice. I like to keep, balance is very, very important to me. I know I'm extremely self-aware, and I've had to be, and again, we'll come through why that's the case. That's not saying I'm great. It just means it's a necessity. So
right.
I'm careful to build my work schedule around what I need as an individual, rather than building my individual schedule around what my work demands. And I'm lucky enough to have a fees and a client base and everything else that just kind of works that way.
Well, you designed it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And you didn't mention hypnotherapy, but you also do.
Yeah, so I'm a hypnotherapist and rapid transformational therapist, and that is folded into my work. And that really is when my clients come up against some issues that they can't shift, or there's some deep inner blocks, usually around self-esteem. Then we can do some hypnotherapy to kind of shift them very quickly, rather than kind of taking, either doing the long way around, which is sometimes quite difficult for people. We want to go deep, really get to the root cause and shift it. And I'm such a huge believer in the power of hypnotherapy. It's something that I've had a lot of. And we've probably all had our own various modalities of therapy and support in one way or another. And hypnotherapy for me is the thing that really worked to such an extent that I became a real advocate for it. So trained in it, and yeah, it's part of my work. And just to be honest with you, it's one of the tools that my clients have access to as and when they need it.
Right. Curious if you trained with Marissa Peers.
I did. Yes.
Oh, you did. Okay.
I did.
She's the one that developed that style, the rapid.
Yeah, she did. I trained with her in London in 2017, and was actually one of the people that had a live recorded session, which is on her training platform, which I sort of kind of regret doing now, if I'm honest with you, because it's quite a vulnerable thing to do.
It is.
But it was great. Yeah. So I know I trained with her personally. Yeah. It was a fantastic experience.
That's so great to hear. I see her all the time and love her content, but you never know what it's like to really work with someone.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah, no, you're right. And Marissa's one of these people that you look at, and she's phenomenally successful. And yet, if you want to look at the subject of consistency, you kind of think like, maybe she can take her foot off the gas. She's got enough momentum now and an audience and some traction and a team to drive this forward. But yet, she, day in, day out, she's constantly showing up with deeper messages, new messages. And so I think she's fantastic,
Definitely. I have a bit of training in hypnotherapy as well. So it was a couple of years ago, and I never had done much of it, but that was one of the techniques that I really enjoyed learning, because it can do such deep work in a short amount of time. So, and I think whenever I mention, certain tools, that's the one that always sticks out. It might be because it's the most familiar for people, and a lot of people have misconceptions about it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the reason that I pursued RTT, because I took a long time to make the decision, is because of the combination of therapies involved and how permanent and how fast the transformation is. That's not in any way devaluing traditional hypnotherapy. It's a phenomenal technique, but there was something about RTT that just worked for me and what I wanted to achieve for people, particularly within a coaching relationship. You don't really want to spend, I typically work with people for 3 months, and you don't want to spend 3 months trying to shift one thing. You want to be able to work on the whole transformation, all of the goals. So if that one thing is in the way, then we can move it quickly and permanently. So it's a kind of, it kind of just worked for me.
Okay. That's great. So the path that you were on before all of this, and even just as far, you can start wherever you'd like, of course. Yeah. Also curious about the transition, I'm guessing with COVID, like, has that been a bit of a new direction for you, and possibly going remote, if that's been a new experience?
No, not really. So how far do I go back? So the major turning point in my life, Willow, was in 2013, and I share this quite openly. I think it's important for people to understand where I'm coming from and why calm is so important to me, and why, and because it's a lived experience, it's empirical for me. It's not something I plucked out of the air and go, that sounds cool, and a nice, convenient, clever collection of words. So I was at the 2001 to 2013, I was living in Dubai. I moved there from London. And for the last couple of years, I'd finally got to a place where I felt I was in a really good place. I got married to my wife, had my first child. And in 2013, completely out of nowhere, I got a very pernicious form of bone marrow cancer called multiple myeloma. And without going into the details of what happened, it was like a Control-Alt-Delete on a computer, and just took me and everything that I built and everything I had down to zero within the space of a few months. And so, literally in October of 2019, we were living what most people would consider just a phenomenal lifestyle out there. I had my own business. So by February of the following year, I was living in my mum's house, had absolutely nothing, and was about to embark on 2 years of really miserable and quite intense recovery. And it was during that period that I became very aware, not intentionally. I think it was a bit of a gift. I think it was one of those experiences where life just said, this is what you need to be doing. And unfortunately, you have to go through this to realize that, which is a bit of a kind of a spiritual take on the whole thing. And it was calm. And I remember being in hospital one day after it first happened, after the initial chaos and the mayhem and the emotion had died down a little bit. And I found my center and I got grounded, because I was doing a lot of personal development work up until then. I was in a lot of, meditation. Okay. I was a Reiki master. So I had a lot of my own training to be able to cope. I suddenly became aware of this just wonderful sense of inner calm. And it was so unfamiliar that a lot of things then fell into place, and realized how much my life had been lacking calm. And the opposite of that is obviously in stress, in a fear, in a turbulence that I think a lot of people live with and just learn to tolerate as it builds up over the years, until either they resolve it consciously because they realize they're approaching burnout, or their body just gives up, or their mind gives up, and they find themselves in, like I was, in a very challenging, difficult situation. So I just became very aware of that. And I think my own kind of innate curiosity then allowed me to go through the rest of the experience with the kind of, okay, so this is happening for me and not to me. What can I learn from this? And most importantly, how can I encode it in a way that I can perhaps help other people? And that's really what gave birth to the idea of something called Agents of Calm, which is something that I'd heard a few years earlier, completely randomly on YouTube. Okay. And it's an old Hawaiian prophecy. And there's the Hawaiians used to believe they had a prophecy that there'll come a time on the planet where there is so much chaos and turbulence that many will need to arise as agents of calm. Which when I heard that, it was like, whoa, I don't know where it came from, but it just kind of hang on, that feels really big and important. Didn't really do anything with it until a few years later when I went, okay, now I get it. And really since then, I've been just slowly building it and understanding what to do with it. And it's been butting up against some of my own personal issues around, I'm not good enough to be doing something like this, or people will judge it. All our stuff that comes up when we have a bigger idea, the more intense the block. Yeah. So it's the bigger idea, the deeper the breath. That's kind of the rule. And that's it really. So then I went to the treatment. Then my family moved to Sweden to recover with my wife and daughter. We spent a couple of years there. Didn't really do much. I was just on a health sabbatical. And then came back to the UK and got into try to sort of do consulting work. And after a couple of years of that, I eventually decided that my calling is coaching and my calling is therapy. That's what I need to do. And that's when I finally made the pivot, I think in 2018, and said, right, I'm going all in on this.
Okay.
And that brings us to today. And coming to your point about COVID, funny story.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just before December 2019, my wife and I sort of made the decision that we felt like it was time to move back to Sweden permanently. My daughter was 9, no, she was 8 at the time. And we were a little bit, just felt a little bit uncomfortable in the UK. Things weren't lining up the way we wanted them to. Mm-hmm. And so we said, right, let's do it. Let's go next summer. So we had time to roll everything up and do the right thing. And COVID hit. And so eventually, after several flights being cancelled, we drove over here at 3 a.m. in the morning on June the 3rd last year, piled everything into a big van.
Oh my God.
The removal van went the day before. And we actually got some friends.
Crazy.
I had some Polish friends in the village where I live, just outside London, who I think really liked the idea of getting out of their house and for a couple of days. I said, don't worry, we'll drive you, just pay the petrol. So we piled in and drove 27 hours. And here we are.
Incredible.
Dog and all.
Dog and all. And that, I'm just curious if you have, is your wife Swedish, or what's the pull to Sweden?
Yeah.
She is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was, and because we'd been here before, we were already in the system. So it was an effortless move. It wasn't like it was a really big sort of expat thing that like Dubai was. It was just like, you know, once we did the drive.
Going back home.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. And a great decision, I'm assuming, that you went back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it is. I mean, we've kind of landed on our feet on a number of different levels. I mean, with the COVID thing, is what it is. We all got COVID just before December of last year. So we went through that, which is pretty tough. So yeah.
You've been through a lot.
Well, it's all relative. I always say that to people that, trauma and adversity is relative. You know,
it's true.
You know, one man's lost business is another man's opportunity. You know, it depends on how you frame it and where you are and how you process these things.
It's true. I was thinking, well, just the intensity of several years, it sounded like that you took off, like going back to 2013, you've had this diagnosis, the experience, and then you took it sounds like several years to step back. Were you studying during this time? Were you thinking far ahead, or were you just thinking, I mean, day by day at that point?
Great question. I think I was writing a lot. That was my muse at the time. I was just called to just process everything I was going through. I was reading and writing a lot. Funny enough, I bought a camera and started doing photography as well. I think creativity was the way that I kind of processed it in various different ways. So yeah, I wrote a lot. I had various blogs going and just to talk about the journey. But that was the main thing. And thinking a tremendous. I had lots of time to think. You do when you're kind of, particularly when you're in hospital, you've got the clock, and that's pretty much it. You know, the bedridden.
Time slows.
Time really slows. Yeah. So, but like I said, I think I was very lucky to have a very kind of sort of childish like curiosity about the whole thing. I mean, it was never funny, but it was there were times where I chose to make it quite amusing, not to cope, but just because I just saw the amusing side of what it was, the juxtaposition between where I was and back before it happened and where I was now. And that all kind of lined into the sort of the sense of just keeping myself calm and positive. Yeah.
Yep. Did you feel like you had to hold it together as well for everyone around you?
I think there was quite a tight correlation between how I was feeling and how everyone else was feeling. So if I was having a down day, I think everyone else would pick up on that. So yeah, I try to keep my spirits up as much as possible. But having done a lot of the training around how to process and achieve emotional freedom, essentially, it was never about denying anything. It was about just being very quick to process, be present, resolve and either harness or remove what I was feeling. So I think you're right. Yeah, I did have to keep it together, but I had to, I chose to, and it sort of came quite naturally. And that's not to say that I'm, look at me, I'm great, because it was horrific. That type of disease is just a howling vortex of uncertainty. And there were some very dark moments, but generally the thread was quite positive. Just because that's what came naturally to me.
I was going to say, it's your personality, seems like. And so now look what you've done with this. You said harrowing. You just said it was
howling vortex.
harrowing vortex. Yeah. You took that and you have transformed. So in that, and if you can tell me more about, this transformation that you personally went through, and now the transformation that you're helping your clients with as a transformation coach.
So great question. I think the main transformation that I went through is not necessarily. That's a really good question, actually. Let me unpack that. So the transformation I went through, the realization I had is that I ended up where I was because of chronic stress. As you know, stress shuts down the immune system, and I was in such a deep state of chronic stress and urgency the whole time with sort of keeping up with what I thought I wanted. My lens through which I saw the world was living to have, to be picked, to be chosen, status, to keep up, right? Rather than living to be, which is about empowering and finding your truth and finding your wisdom. So I had very little idea who I really was, right? I was very much defined by the things that I had. And I think Dubai as a place, it's quite easy to fall into that trap because, that's the entire environment it was. And a lot of that stuff is linked to a lot of issues from being a child. I went to boarding school at a very young age, which created quite a lot of issues around abandonment and identity fracture and things like that. But we don't need to go into that. But that was the fundamental way that my lens changed. Is I went from, does this support my need to be chosen and picked and recognized in society and culture, or does this support my need to understand myself at a deeper level and find my truth? So that was a fundamental lens. And I guess I do help my clients do that, because I think one of the ways in which, particularly if someone is really struggling with feeling intimidated by their choices, kind of trapped in the foxhole, being a bit defensive, one of the things that traditionally comes up is they herd please, not people please, they herd please. There's people pleasing, there's herd pleasing. So what I mean by herd pleasing, you go onto LinkedIn or Facebook and you've got all these communities, all these people doing these things. You go, right, that must be the thing. That's the thing that's going to make me feel better. That seems to be normal. I'm going to do that. And in so being, they go further and further away from who they are. They lose their core, they lose their control. And that in itself just reveals a lot of issues. So that's the main thing. And under that were other switches from, constantly wanting to be influenced to make decisions versus just being inspired by choice. That's a big difference. Like, when you're trying to keep up, everything is a possible magic pill to that ultimate status. Whereas really, when you're in control and you're looking for inspiration, it's more of a controlled choice. It's more of a conscious, purposeful decision to go, that really resonates. I'm going to explore that. But I'm not going to treat it with I'm going to treat it lightly. So what's the word I was looking for? High commitment, high engagement, low commitment, I think it is. Just don't treat things so seriously, all the time. Because that can lead to a lot of stress and everything was very serious in my life before. If this doesn't work, that's the end of it. So you hold on really, really tight. And that narrows your perspective and you can't see opportunities. It's just, you kind of become a bit tunnel visioned. So mostly now, the transformation that I work with clients now is really just releasing their own inner blocks. And it's about empowering the self, empowering the vision, empowering and building an empowered system to deliver that vision. So it's all about empowerment, but it starts with the empowered self. If we can get that right, if we can build our core, which is our values and our value and our strengths, and we really connect with our genius being the gifts that we naturally have and the things we're naturally very good at, we find our calm. And there's 7 principles to that. But fundamentally, inner calm is all about resilience, and it's all about confidence and building. I think there's something called the Lion's Rule, which is a Buddhist thing, which is, the Lion's Rule, which is a degree of confidence and happiness, completely independent of what's going on around you. So it's really finding that inner sort of Lion's Rule with yourself, and control is the final one, is to have that control, which means getting rid of the thing, being able to deal with turbulence, being able to deal with things when you're triggered, and just controlling the things you consume. Because ultimately, we can only control one thing, and that's how we respond to life, how we respond to the things that are going on inside of us, and how we can respond to the things that are happening outside of us. That's ultimately it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first.
Sorry, did you develop the 7 levels of calm? You did. Yeah. Okay. So I was reading what you had, on your website, and I thought, okay, this is incredible. And each one, so I was reading each one, and I think I was becoming more calm as I was reading each one of them. Could you walk through them? You can, just kind of go as fast as you'd like, just to give people an idea, because these are the seven principles, I think, of life in general.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for taking the time to read them. That's very kind of you. So, of course. And I've got to tell you, the list that exists now is very different to the list that existed a year ago and the year before.
Oh,
but not very different. But where it is now, bar perhaps I'm going to add one, which is around nutrition.
Yeah.
Which is really important. So the first one is the most important one is presence, and this isn't a linear thing. We do 1 and then we go 1 to 7. It's a circular thing. The first one principle is presence, and presence is just so important, and it's just the ability to be with yourself and be present with what's happening around you as the awareness of what's happening around you. To understand that you are awareness. You're not your thoughts. You're not your emotions. And the more that you can build that presence, it releases so much anxiety and so much of the issues that we create for our own life. And there's lots of ways that we get to that. A lot of people mistake presence for mindfulness, and they are very similar. But I always say that the mindfulness to presence is what stretching is to running. Yeah. So mindfulness is a way of preparing yourself to build presence as a habit, as a part, just a natural part of who you are. So that's the first one. And just the mental, emotional, physiological benefits of presence and having that kind of calm in your life are just phenomenal. And that was one of the first things I learned whilst lying in hospital bed for 6 months, was just the more present I am with what's going on around me. It's just the way it was so much easier to cope and allow my curiosity to take over from the fear. And so that's kind of the first one. The second one is clarity. It's just a commitment, a daily commitment to clarity about who you are, what matters to you, your values, what's going on around you, the people in your life, and constantly checking in on that, because that changes. We change and we evolve, and our values change and evolve. And I know values sound a bit self-helpery 101, but honestly, once I did a value check-in a few months, that's a couple of months ago. I took a bit of a detox from social media. I found myself not being present and being triggered a little bit. So I pulled back and had a check-in and realized that, the priority values, the top 5 in my life, had changed a little bit, and I wasn't honoring them. But also clarity about where you are, what you want, why you want it. Not being too over analytical, but just having just developing almost an always on appreciation of your individualism and what you're contributing to yourself in the world. This next one is heart-centeredness, which is so amazing. And this is something that is quite recent for me. And that is just learning how to make that 18-inch journey as quickly as possible in times of anxiety and turbulence, because we've spent so long in our head. So much going on. And as soon as we're in our head, we fall victim to what our mind has evolved over thousands and thousands of years to do, which is keep us safe. And that shows up as things like, this isn't familiar, so I'm going to reject it. And I'm going to reject it by anger, anxiety, fear, stress, all of those, modern tools that we use. I'm going to remind you that you might not be good enough because that thing happened when you were 5. That's my way of protecting you. So anyway, we won't get into the psychology of it. So, and heart-centeredness is simply the ability to use presence, to pause when you realize that you've been triggered, and then go down into the heart and actually access the heart's intelligence. Like I said, this is quite new for me. This is about a year ago, and I intend to try and study this a bit deeper because I can't tell you how powerful it is. When you have a moment, because we all talk about listen to your heart, and what does your heart tell you? You know, oh, I can feel it in my heart. Right. We all use that language every day without really being conscious of it and really feeling it.
Like, what does it mean?
Yeah, right. Exactly. So imagine when you have a moment where you go, I can really, wow, I can hear, you know, because the heart has its own intelligence. It's intimately connected with all of life. And you know, the heart beats before, it's the first organ in the body the heart beats before the brain is fully developed in the fetus. So go and figure that out, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Which is amazing.
Love that.
So the other one is heart-centeredness and building a practice of that. And again, it doesn't mean that we have to go through life walking around with our hands over our hearts going, well, let me listen to the heart. It's a tool, you know, it's a tool to push back on turbulence and bring calm. And the other two are gratitude and generosity. And they're quite closely linked. And really those are day-to-day practices that we should use anyway. So I won't talk about that, but the practice of gratitude is so important, and there's a science behind it on so many different levels. And radical generosity for me, I just feel is showing up in so much of the world right now. If we talk about LinkedIn, for example, I know people are sharing content and sharing their stories and investing their time in writing all this stuff. There is a commercial agenda. Okay. Of course there is.
Yeah.
But still, some of the generosity and the level of generosity that is being shared compared to even 2 years ago is just extraordinary. I'm genuine. Every day I kind of read people just going, you know, you didn't just type that out in 5 minutes and go, there you go, there's my post for the day. There's a real sense of craft and vulnerability and intention behind that. So that's just one example, but I think we need much more generosity in the world. What I mean by that is generosity of our gifts, generosity of our time, generosity of things other than money. Really, it's great if you've got lots of money. You know, money's the easiest thing to give away if you've got it, right?
True.
All right.
Definitely.
Like, it really is. It's easy. You know, give me, you know, if you're well off and you've got a great revenue coming in or whatever, it's easy to give away money. It's a lot harder to give away time or experience and knowledge and empathy. So that's what I mean by that. Then there is the principle of energy, which is very powerful, and that's being conscious that each and every one of us is an instrument of culture, and each and every one of us is affecting the whole of life with our energy, and it's being conscious of that. Like, we've all walked into a room, and without really knowing why, just gone, something doesn't feel right in here, you know. Or you're at a dinner party with someone you don't know, and you just kind of get the feeling, you know what, I just don't know why, but I'm getting uncomfortable from that person. Yeah, or this person here is just lighting up my life. They're amazing. It's energy, okay, and we can go deeper into the science of that, but it's taking responsibility for the energies that you choose from your own life and the life of the people around you, because it rubs off on you. It really does. And you can, you know, walking past a stranger, you can literally, depending on various factors, you can literally change the entire trajectory of their day, depending on what energy you choose to bring. So it's being responsible for energy and taking a bit more of a proactive approach to understanding what that means and how you can change your energy and how you can change your emotions. Yes. How does, you know, and the final one is the principle of surrender. And that really is I love working on surrender with clients.
Sounds so good.
It's just, it's surrender really. It just, that kind of wraps around all of them. It's just surrendering to the fact that, you know, you're just, you know, you're an extraordinary human being. Okay. You do have gifts, no matter where you are. Surrendering to the fact that no one's going to rescue you as well. Now, that might sound a bit harsh, but if you were to let that sink in, you're 80% towards emotional freedom. When you finally accept that, you know what, no one's coming, I've got to do this by myself. The 20% that's left is just action. So, and also surrendering to the mysterious nature of the universe, really, and the fact that we're in very intense times. They're accelerated, and they're accelerated for a reason. And and it comes back to the point about being an agent of calm and bringing and choosing to bring the right energy to the world. You can contribute to what's happening right now in the most positive way possible. Surrendering to your gifts, surrendering to your dreams, your purpose, your mission. It shows up in different ways for different people. And that's just great because it's just fun. The different techniques that we use to go through that are quite
surrender.
Yeah.
The surrender piece. So I'm rereading Letting Go, The Pathway to Surrender by David Hawkins. It's just the most, I feel like I'm going to be rereading it forever, because it's such a simple concept. And like you just said, it's the best feeling. It's the best, and surrendering to many different things in our life. Because do you believe that we're programmed the other way around? Isn't it like, go out there and make it happen? It's like this, it's more of a push energy. I feel like in life in general, it's about achievement and going after something rather than surrendering, having goals, dreams, ideas.
Yeah.
Direction.
Yeah, I don't think we're programmed. I think we're programmed a little bit by society and culture that way, certainly. Not so much anymore. I think one of the wonderful things, or I don't know if it's as big as a paradigm shift, but one of the cultural movements that you see happening now is people are starting to take control of their own destiny. People are realizing that they have personal sovereignty and it's valuable. And I think that's been helped by the pandemic, because ultimately what happened in the pandemic is we were cut off from a lot of the things from which we would typically draw confidence from. We draw value and worth and love. And we were kind of left with ourselves, with our families, but ultimately, it's just me in my house, now what? And that in itself, I think for many people, even they might not use this language, was sort of a forced spiritual awakening, really. There's a lovely guy, a wonderful, wonderful guy who I don't know him. I've never met him. He's quite famous, but I've decided to call him a mentor just because of the amount of time. Called Michael Mead, and he's a mythologist and storyteller. He talks about the analogy, or the way what he uses to make sense of what's happening right now is the mythical rite of passage, which is the structure of most mythical stories, the hero's journey, where there is a period of isolation where everything falls apart. Then there is a kind of a betwixt and between moment, which is called liminality, where we kind of forget everything we know, and then we have to reevaluate and relearn. And there is kind of then a reintegration to community, which we're starting to go through now. Okay. And if you think about mythology is about things that never happen, but always are. Does that make sense? There's stories that never happen, but they always are, because if you unpack them and look at them in terms of human experience and the storytelling, like that, they're always happening around us. And for me, I just think it's just the most wonderful piece. And the reason it's sort of looping back to what I said, I kind of feel that we're all starting to emerge now. We all have to make that choice. We have to make that choice. Do I go back to, for all intents and purpose, who I was and what I was before the pandemic, or am I going to have allowed what's happened over the last 2 years to take me a different trajectory, and protect my personal sovereignty, protect my control, protect the things that I've come to learn about myself and cherish in myself. And I just think, everyone has to make that choice. And I guess that's almost a little bit of what I do behind the scenes, really, in my coaching, is try and encourage people to see that, this is what I said earlier, this is the time to do it. This is the time to blaze your own trail. Or
Carve your own path.
Carve your own path. Now's the time to do it. And the key to that title is your, because it's your path.
Yep.
And you've had the strength and the patience and the self-trust to survive, cope and survive through an unprecedented period of humanity and human existence. It's opening up again. What are you going to do with everything that you've learned?
Right. Has your business, curious if it's boomed or it's become much busier during these times?
Before I got COVID, I had my practice was amazing. I was waitlisted actually. I couldn't take any more clients, which was a goal I set myself for next year. So I was, but unfortunately, getting COVID in December, really kneecapped me, because because of my health background. Not only did it really take me, I didn't go to hospital, but not only did it really take me down for a long period of time, but it also triggered a relapse. So I had to go back on treatment. And my simple rule is if I can't be there for my clients 110%, then I can't be there for my clients. And so since December, the graph doesn't look too healthy. I'm not too beaten up by it. It is what it is. I have, it's that experience has given me even deeper understanding about myself and ways that I can help people. So I'm now in the process of gently building that up, and I've got much deeper clarity around who I am best equipped and uniquely capable of serving and how I can serve them, which I love. I think I had clarity before, but that's the funny thing about clarity. When you commit to it, it's not an end point. You go, right, now I'm clear, off I go. It's like, it's an evolving strength, an evolving virtue that you have. And things just, so yeah. It's been a good summer. I feel very grounded and centered again, and looking forward to getting back up to that level of busyness.
Well, it's possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've done it. And I'm curious if you could define confidence and what that means for you.
That's a great question. Because I actually did a talk recently with an incredible mental health platform in Dubai called Safe Space. Exactly on that. I think confidence for me is a non-negotiable, deep inner belief that no matter what, you'll be okay.
That's so an inner knowing.
Yes, it's an deep inner trust and inner reliance and inner belief of yourself that no matter what, and you can, after no matter what, you can enter whatever you want, no matter what happens, no matter what I do, no matter where I go, no matter what, I'll be okay. I think that sits at the root of it.
Love that. Yes. As a coach, as a mentor, how do you help people build confidence?
That's a good question. Confidence for me is a natural. It emerges quite naturally from the empowered self, because it's really about self-awareness. The deeper we understand ourselves, and the deeper that we can appreciate our gifts and our individuality, our strength, what we've achieved, what we want to achieve, that sense of self-trust and that sense of inner strength that, I've got everything I need to be okay no matter what happens, naturally emerges. So how I would individually work with someone will really depend on them and their own particular situation. Whether they're really suffering from a crisis of situational confidence over something in their business, or whether they're dealing with issues around core confidence, which should always be which is linked to the identity, right? So at a deep level of identity, if that's not wrapped in strength and confidence, then that's where I'd start. If it's situational confidence, that's a bit easier, but that's about really looking at, that's where confidence and resilience is quite closely related in terms of confidence, in terms of the commitment to what you're doing, in terms of your control over feeling the anxiety or stress or whatever's thrown up that's making you feel unconfident. So that's easier to work on than core, because core confidence is a bit deeper. That will come from childhood typically, or it will come from trauma. Okay. And so we have to go back and work on that. But honestly, I think the easiest way for anybody to start building up their confidence is to ask themselves exactly the same question you asked me. What does confidence mean to me? Because it's such an easy word to throw out there, isn't it? I just don't feel very confident. Yeah. So okay, well, what do you mean by confidence? Yeah, I just don't feel very good at this. Well, that's competence. That's not confidence. So it's to ask yourself, what does confidence mean to you? And really understand what confidence is at a deep level. And if you choose to accept that definition, which is actually, it's that inner belief and inner trust that no matter what, I'll be okay. How strongly do you feel that? And then you've got a more honest and transparent answer to why or why not you have that core confidence. And then there's techniques like things like just doing rewriting your story. So going back over, a lot of people use events of their past and realize and feel that they're being constantly dictated and shaped by past failings and past traumas and past issues. You have the choice to go back and reframe those. And when you work with a professional or a coach or a mentor that helps you do that and helps you understand, yes, that happened, but it's not the event isn't the problem. It's your interpretation of the event that is creating the problem. And once you give them permission, not that they need your permission, but it's necessary once you give them permission to say, no, let's rewrite that. What did you learn from that? You're still standing. What strength did you pull from that? If someone else was going through that, how would you help them? And all of a sudden you just see them, okay, I get it. Mm-hmm. So, right. So then that's something they can go off and they can almost completely rewrite their entire backstory and just dissolve all of those emotional charges. Then there's things like body language, which is great because the connection between body language and confidence is so, so important. And just how they hold their posture and how they smile, how they shake hands. And then you can gamify it and make it fun, So just those are a couple of examples. But the key thing is action, is forward action. That's all retrospect is action. It's like, okay, what are the areas in your life that you want to feel more confident in? And let's focus on taking action in those areas. Okay. Let's start small and then build out. And if you come up against turbulence, you'll come up against fear and you pull back. Let's understand why. Was it somebody? Was it a sense of fear? Was it a sense of competence? And I'm going a bit into too much detail now, but that's an example.
I love it. Yes. This is so great because I teach a lot about confidence on camera. So again, it's like, it's a medium, it's a camera. And a lot of people struggle with that because it's unfamiliar or it can feel more exposed or vulnerable. So I love the way you described that. It's an inner knowing. It's not something that it's not a mask that you can put on.
No, exactly. And it certainly isn't, and it certainly isn't something that you can pull from other people. Now, I'll footnote that and say, once you have a relatively healthy level of confidence, there's nothing wrong with wanting a few likes and some feedback and some accolades. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is if that's all you're using to keep yourself inflated, then that's a precarious situation to be in. Yep. So the key, people go, oh, never look for external validation for confidence. Like, well, not really. If you're in a good space and, it's kind of nice, it's human nature, It
is. And we need that. That's how we relate to ourselves. It's the external validation and the internal, of course. But yes, it's so important to think that we're not ever needing that or that it's not important, I think that's a mistake for sure. And what are you most excited about right now? Like the work that either you're doing now or something that you're looking forward to?
I think, I've finally crossed the threshold and thrown away the keys to the door that leads back to the other side of it with Agents of Calm. With Agent, and so I'm moving slowly but quickly with that now, and much more purposefully with a lot of clarity around what that could look like, and starting very gently to introduce it to people who I think might want to come on board. It's not something I'm going to do alone. It needs a collective. I don't know how many that people will be, but it needs a group of people that believe in the idea and want to contribute to it. So that's the thing I'm most excited about. Really, is just really moving forward with that now and turning it into a reality in the short term, a commercial reality in the medium term.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, I am all about it. So if you're
looking
for agents, whatever you said it, and I thought I just have this vision of these agents just out in the world and dropping down, spreading the calm. So what does that look like for you? Is it you teaching and just wondering how people that are listening to this and curious, how to get involved, and I'll link all of your contact information.
Thank you.
What would that look like?
I think initially it will be a 3 layers. Initially, it will be the work I'm doing now. So one of my signature courses on my website is the Journey to Inner Calm. That will be changed to Agents of Calm. So I will still do the one-on-one work. It will be a group coaching thing, which I haven't done before. Okay. So it will actually be a program that will allow me and the people that come on board to work with a number of people at once. But as I said before, mostly I want it to be something that can go into organizations, creative-based organizations who want to provide a level. I don't want to call it a mental health support thing, because I think it is, because I'm not certified in that area, and it's, although there is an mental health implication, there's an emotional and physical health implication. For me, it's really more a self-awareness and resilience practice more than anything else. So it will be going into creative organizations and really, I mean, someone said this to me the other day. I was catching up with a friend. He said, basically, you're a spirit animal. That's it. You sit in the corner, and when someone needs you, they come over and sit next to you and have a chat. And I went, yeah, pretty much. So that's it. But and then going in and doing talks and pieces within the organizations with everyone else that's involved. And then the final piece of the jigsaw will be to do retreats. That's always been something that I've wanted to do, is to hold annual retreats somewhere wonderful in the world, ideally warm, near a beach or in the mountains, and where people, off the grid, but it won't be it will be personalized to individuals. So rather than come and it will just be everyone going through the same thing, you will have a customized program for you based on, because some people already have very high levels of gratitude and generosity. There's principles, they'll come in different ways. So there will be a collective element to it, but then they'll be prescribed. Sounds a bit pharmacy, doesn't it? But they'll have a carefully prescribed and curated week based on what they need. Yeah, bespoke. There you go. Bespoke week. That's a British,
your word. Okay, that sounds wonderful. Really, really incredible. And
thank you.
Yeah, amazing. And you do have that energy about you. So I think just being, like you said, you're a spirit animal. So you're in the presence of people, and it just has a natural effect.
Thank you. That's great to hear. And it's the only, it just feels like it's been a long time coming, really. I mean, it started out as a t-shirt company. How's that? In 2015, really? I started making all these t-shirts with these lines like "Breathe, brother," and all these different very spiritual things. And I just, wasn't really working. I think I sold 2.
To your brother and your mom. Yeah,
exactly. A couple of friends, one of which never delivered. But so I'm looking forward to seeing it come to life.
Oh, that's very cool. I mean, it is the evolution, right? It's like starts with the intention. Sounds like the intention's been there, and now it's just evolved into this much more, just so multifaceted.
Yeah, and I think it's quite unusual for me, because I suffer a little bit from what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of delivery impatience. Sometimes I get an idea, and like the kid that goes to a theme park, they want to go on everything at once. They can't wait. And it's just, I have an idea and it's out there, and it's not really thought through, and it's a bit clumsy, and which is fine, because then you can iterate and stuff. But the time that this has taken to germinate and evolve and respond feels like it kind of feels very calm in itself. So in many ways, the idea is taking its own form. And it just feels intuitively now that I think the timing of, what's happening in the world. And given that, I think it was Alain de Botton, the writer and philosopher, once said that calm is one of the most distinctive longings of the modern age. And he wrote that on his School of Life and the Book of Life blog. And I read that many years ago. And again, it kind of really hit me. I went, God, yeah, you're right. It is. I've never really thought about it before. But I think now gosh, so I think I'm quite lucky with timing.
It's very, it was like, it's divine timing for sure. And like you said, everything, the period of like the germination and the growth and everything else, if it happens so quickly, I wonder, as humans, yes, things can happen quickly, but like the depth of it just wouldn't be possibly as rich, if you had, let's say, really quick success. I mean, again, it's who knows where you would be now. So curious about the calm and your daily practice. Do you have any rituals that you can share, or anything that you do regularly to keep yourself in that state?
I do. And again, your timing is brilliant, because reference to my point about having a detox over the last couple of months from social media and stuff like that. While I had that period, I kind of turned my work on myself. So right now I'm building discipline and consistency, because I know that's two things that I struggle with. And the easiest way to do it, I mean, I take a lot of inspiration from James Clear. I mean, I don't think anyone will ever write anything better when it comes to habits and habit building. And that guy, he's phenomenal. But so I'm using his teaching. And so I morning is very important, morning ritual, rather than waking up, having coffee and just looking at social media. I meditate now in the morning for 15 minutes. And then I write. So I do praise journal. So I'm rewriting some of my backstory. So that's when I mentioned reframing stuff that feeds a particular belief that I'm trying to shift, and it's just working really, really well. So the meditation and the writing, and then after I take my daughter to school, I do Wim Hof breathing, the Wim Hof technique. Yep.
Yes, definitely.
So I do 3 rounds of that, and then another deep meditation for 20 minutes. And then I get up and start my day. And then I've got into the habit of exercising at midday without fail, even if it's one push-up, doesn't matter. Just every day do something. If it's a full-blown HIIT session in the gym, that's great. If it's a cycle, if it's a 1K cycle home, that's great. Because I mean, because of being on things like chemotherapy and stuff like that, your ability to do certain things fluctuates. It goes up and down. And you have to listen to the body. And sometimes I try and push myself too hard, and I pay the price for it. So I do what I can when I can. Again, it's not really about, I'm 48. I'm not interested in building guns or abs or any of that type of stuff. I've had that moment. It's about the discipline and the consistency and the respect that I have for the body. So it's sending the message back to the body, going, I dig you, I love you, I'm taking care of you as much as I can, even if it's one push up a day. And that really is all it takes. It doesn't have to be this huge commitment. And I write at the end of the day, do a lot of writing again. And I do EFT every other week. So emotional freedom, tapping every other day. And I've done that every day now for the last 18 days since I started the thing. And I'm committed now to do it for 2 months.
This is the whole routine, or just EFT?
No, the whole routine. Yeah.
The whole routine. Okay. I love that. And I'm always curious about people's habits. And the EFT, I'm actually posting something today about EFT.
Oh, are you? Amazing. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Honestly, that's
the best.
It really is. I'm trying to find a natural place for it within Agents of Calm at the moment. I think it will probably be around surrender, but it's very powerful. It really is.
Yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned that. And you did post about consistency. I saw that about that you had a newsletter and you just stopped writing it. And you just said, well, there was for no other reason, I just stopped writing it. And that topic is so huge, because in anything, if you want to achieve anything, it's about consistency, discipline, and especially online and social media, there's that push to stay consistent. So just curious if you've had any more epiphanies about that, or any shifts since you wrote about that, about consistency.
Yeah, I think a lot of that was, that was really bizarre. I it was just, the funny thing was realizing, because I literally just didn't even think about it. And like, you know, it's an important part of my business. And my newsletter has taken lots of different shapes. It's been called one thing and then another. And to be honest with you, I've only just recently, since it's turned into the Agents of Calm thing, have really said, I've committed now for this year, for the next 12 months, this is what it's going to be. I'm not going to change it. I'm not going to change the title. Mm-hmm. It goes out on Friday. It's one quote, one video, one list, one reminder. That's it. Just because that. Mm-hmm. So I guess the answer is to answer your question, it's in that I've just realized that sometimes when we're trying to build habits and we're trying to build consistency, we make it too hard for ourselves. We go from 0 to 100 and go, right, I've got to stay at 100 now. And so with the talking about, you know, that ritual, I mean, it's not easy. It's really hard. It's really, really hard. Yeah. And what I've said to myself now is, even if I just wake up and close my eyes and breathe for 30 seconds, then at least I have honored the intention of meditating in the morning. And that's what I found is that's made it a lot easier to get into the habit. So because ultimately what you're trying to do is wake up without even thinking about it, you meditate. Or if you're into nutrition, like without even thinking about it, you go to the store, you walk straight past the aisles that you might normally go down and buy the white bread or the chocolate or whatever it is you're trying to give up. It's just trying to automate these things and make them what was conscious becomes unconscious. It's that conscious competence to unconscious competence type thing. So for me, I've just taken all the pressure off myself. When I have these kind of spurts of energy and motivation to do things, I usually put so much pressure on myself. And I think that's quite typical of a lot of people, you know.
It is. High achievers, yeah.
Yeah, I've been inspired by somebody. I'm going to do what he's doing, and here's the thing, and I'm going to do 5,000 press ups every week. And, you know, it doesn't happen. So I've just changed my whole approach, and I've made it, I think this comes back to my values. I've kind of wrapped everything around answering that, and answering goes, does this align with me and what I need? And I've just made it easy. That's it. Make it easy. I think it was, I posted something the other day about, 5 products, because I've also set up a little e-commerce business, which is a bit of a side hustle, but it's an automated revenue type thing that it's just a bit of fun, but it's done. And what I didn't realize is that there's a big part of that which really sucked, and that was editing product descriptions, because each website that I sell on has different requirements for what you can and can't put in titles. It's complex, all right? So I had to manually edit 3,500 products. Okay. And
wow.
Yeah. Now you can't, for me, usually my mind would just look at that 3,500 and go, I have to sit down and do those in one session. Right. And you get overwhelmed, and it wasn't. So I just set myself a target of 5 products before breakfast. That was it. Just do 5 products before breakfast. It's easy. It takes 10 minutes. Done. And so it just made it easily effortless. That was it. Just, you know, and then what naturally happens is once it becomes automated and it becomes kind of like you're sort of doing it unconsciously, then you can raise the bar. Then you can start to lean in and go, right, now I'm going to make this about something bigger. I'm going to go for, you know, whatever your particular goals are. So yeah, to answer your question about the consistency thing, I often share, one of my rules for posting content is at least once a week to share something that I'm going through. All right. You know, that's very real for me in my life. That's very present. And I think that was probably inspired by the fact that I'm kind of working through this now, and to avoid this happening again and take me into the opposite of one of my values, which is harmony, take me into disharmony, I'm going to have to solve this in one way or another. That was it really.
Yeah. Well, I love the vulnerability piece of sharing that, and also bringing people into your experience. And I think you probably realize that most people have that are struggling with the same thing.
Exactly.
So in that openness, I love that you share something that that's going on for you. That's a good idea. It's great storytelling because it's fresh.
Yeah, exactly.
Fresh in your mind.
Exactly. I mean, I think the only potential asterisk I'll put on that is the difference between healing in public There's something someone talked to me about that once when I was, is be careful that you don't, and I think that's, I think wrong with that. I mean, some people, but I think when it becomes the reason, the conscious reason for sharing that, I think there is a line between some of the content that's been shared now. It's like, is this a healing thing here? Or is this an inspiration and a teaching and a value thing? And be able to make sure you know the difference between the two. Because, and the reason I say that is because I've been guilty of that in the past, and it's come back to, it hasn't worked. In fact, the opposite of work. You've been judged, and people have gone, and you've got some comments that have been counter to what you were looking for, and that makes it really difficult to deal with.
Right. If you're in the healing phase, that makes so much sense. I did hear about something, in storytelling, business, of course, context. Only share if you have had a transformation. If this is no longer you're in the thick of it, and that you've had a learning or something, because you just gave a great example. Someone pokes a hole in it or criticizes, which there's always going to be that, either they're saying it out loud or not. So, and being able to be removed from it in a way that it is a teaching moment and bringing value rather than.
And I think you also have to, I don't know if it's ethical, but I think you need to be quite careful, because when you're sharing anything around personal development or coaching or matters of the self, there will be people that are in stages of their lives that are desperately seeking that type of information. And if it's coming from a place of, I think there's quite a lot of responsibility with sharing that. I think it needs to come from a real intention of service and value, rather than, I'll give you an example again from me, going way, 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 way back to early to 2004 or 5, when I was going through a bit of a kind of a spiritual, I was doing Reiki and meditating. Before then, I'd done nothing. I mean, I was your atypical London bloke. I'd never picked up a book. My entire life was around going to clubs and drinking and having sports and football, not in a laddish way, but I just I knew nothing about anything outside of that. And all of a sudden,
that's crazy.
I had this 5 years of just going, wow, there's something else. Anyway, my point being is I would then read something and then go out and preach it and try and teach it to people in a really quite an irresponsible way. It came from a good place, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, do you know what your human design is?
I do, but I can't remember. I'm a something manifester.
Okay. Probably manifest generator.
Yeah.
Manifesting generator?
It could be that.
Or both. Okay.
It could be that. But my mother can't remember when I was born. She can't remember the time. So it's not exact science. Yeah.
It's probably right though. If you have an idea of the time, but it can switch it though. Like if it's off by a few hours, it'll switch the type to a different one. So I'm going to dig up your birth certificate.
Yeah, I know. I do. Yeah. And my mum should remember. Human design.
I know. It is. I thought maybe you're a projector, because that's the kind of the projector type is to be the wise one and the guide. And then, but what can happen is you tend to teach when people aren't asking you, for the information. And so part of that is, and I think this goes for any person is to help others or teach or share or guide when someone is inviting you to do so. So with that, I mean, that's a standard classic thing, but yeah, I'm a projector and definitely been guilty of that too. Knowing I know the right way, and I'm going to tell you, even if you're not asking for it. And then of course that can backfire. People, they have to be ready to hear it, So, well, how can people find you? We know that you're on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
That's where you share some content.
I'm right now, I was on everything, and that was half the problem.
Yeah, too much.
I have thankfully avoided the lure of TikTok, even though TikTok is just the most phenomenal thing. I was with my 9-year-old daughter yesterday, and she was showing me how she does videos and stuff. And it's like, God, I'm so glad I'm not on this, because that's it. I'm just off down a rabbit hole, right? Just
Yeah.
So I'm mostly on LinkedIn.
Where's Dad?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's out in the garden doing cartwheels.
Yeah.
My website is just christianburne.com. And I do have, with an E, and I have a Facebook group called the Agents of Calm Society. And that has been dormant with permission from my community, but I'm just starting to ramp that up again now that I have got clarity. So that's probably going to be one of my main assets going forward, to pull people, to pull a tribe together, simply because right now there isn't really anything better. I was on what's the Clubhouse thing for a bit, but I didn't really get any traction there and didn't feel it was the right thing. So mostly on LinkedIn, my website, and on the Facebook group.
Okay, great. I will link all that below.
Thank you.
People can work with you one-on-one, and then you have a group coaching program, and you also have an email list as well.
Yes.
Right? A newsletter.
Yeah, I do. I do, which you can, I think is on, actually, I don't do a great job of building that. So I was about to say, how can you join the newsletter? I don't know. There's a link somewhere.
It's out there.
It's in me. I think it's on my Linktree link, but yeah. Okay. There's quite a few. There's quite a few cracks that I need to not paper over, but fix. But yeah.
You sound like lots going on. Yes. So any last words of wisdom? You've left us with so many.
No. I just first thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk so much. I've never had, usually on these things it's a bit of, I've got the opportunity to get to know you a bit more about your work, but I'm sure I'll have the opportunities to do that in the future. But no, I think the only thing I want to circle back to is that point about taking a step back and lifting up, if you can, metaphorically speaking, above the world and understanding what we've all been through collectively, this kind of rite of passage, and that we've all been isolated. We've all been through this awful, challenging period of liminality. And to a degree, we're still going through it. There is still so many issues that have percolated up that need solving. But I do think there is a beginning of a reemergence. And I'm just going to borrow your title, is just carve your own fucking path. Because really, now's the time to do it. It really is. Now's the time to do it. Whatever that thing is, there is always a way. And if you are somebody that is looking through life as I just kind of being driven by obtaining things that will make me fit in and be noticed and accepted, try and just spend a couple of days or even a couple of hours through the lens of who can I be? Who can I become to empower myself, to empower my confidence, to empower my abilities, my imagination, my creativity, and the resilience and resources I need to really move forward with this and make what I want happen. Now, I know that there's a spectrum there and that will land differently for different people depending on their circumstances, but everyone has a choice and there is always a way. It's as simple as that. There's always a way.
Always a way. I love that. Thank you.
Thank you
for everything. And just want to acknowledge you again for the work that you're doing and what you're putting out in the world. And Agents of Calm, you're leading
Watch this space.
Watch this space.
Willow, thank you very much. It's been lovely to chat.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoy the show, please rate and review on Apple Podcasts. It makes a big difference for visibility. And even better, share this episode with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode every other Wednesday. If you're interested in working together to elevate your online presence, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out to me on Instagram at whereiswillow. I also hang out on LinkedIn, Willow McDonough. Until then, cheers to carving your own fucking path. I love you.